Tūmeke FM.
Tūmeke FM. Ko humai ki te ao o hine rau katauri.
I really need to start. You need some information prior to learning more about bone marrow donation and why we promote it. So this is our boy here. His name is Chase. Most of you probably know that. And we were just a normal, average family. Nothing, out of the ordinary. We lived in Hamilton and we were getting on with our lives. And just before our boy's second birthday, we noticed that he was getting slightly sick at his creche, and they were calling up going, oh, he's got a bit of runny nose, he's just not quite well enough, can you come pick him up? So that went on for a number of weeks, probably maybe as long as 3 months, and we talked to the doctor and they just said, oh, winter bugs, it circulates around a placenta, so you just have to, it's nothing serious. And we kept doing blood tests and nothing too sinister was showing at the beginning. And in fact we were promised to I guess not promised, but the specialist at Waikato said he definitely doesn't have cancer. And because my mother-in-law of course pressed that. She herself was a breast cancer survivor, so knew a lot about how cancer infiltrates the body, and she pressed for them to give us that security, which they did, and of course they were really, really wrong. And out of the blue we got a call from Starship saying we've received Chase's blood results and can you get up here as quick as you can and pack a bag. So those sentences indicated that we were facing something troubling. We didn't know what it was at that stage, but we thought it might be something like a blood condition, but we of course felt reassured from what the specialist at Waikato had told us that it wouldn't be cancer. But on the 11th of March 2011, 3 days before our boy's second birthday, we of course got the news that he did in fact have leukemia, and he had an aggressive strain of leukemia called acute myeloid leukemia. And a strand M7 was of course one of the worst strands you can get. I mean, all of them are terrible, but they rank them, and there's two types of leukemia, ALL and AML. AML is the one you really don't want, and our boy had it, and M7 was a strain that you really don't want of all the strains, and of course he had it too. So our backs were up against the wall from day one, and that was the first time we had heard the term bone marrow transplant, because our oncologist said he will definitely need one. Some children, the oncologist will say, we'll do treatment and see how we go, and if that's not successful then we'll look at a bone marrow transplant. But because he had M7, straight off the bat, chemo is not going to be strong enough, we need a bone marrow transplant. So that's the first time we'd heard the term. I'd been a blood donor since high school, and I thought I knew, about blood things, but clearly there was a whole realm of blood processes in the body that I knew nothing about, and bone marrow transplants was one of them. So I packed for a couple of days. Ryan packed for the night because he's positive, and he thought we're just going to go up there, they're going to say we've got some blood disorder, here's a treatment, go home. So on that night we had to ring all our family and give them the news. Of course they were distraught, and I had to go and tell my mother-in-law and father-in-law, we're going to be here for a while, can you call into Hamilton and pick us up some clothes? And we didn't leave for 6 months. Whoa. So Starship was our new home, and the treatment protocol for AML was 4 rounds of intensive chemotherapy, and like I mentioned before, bone marrow transplant was really our big guns against beating the cancer. So as you can see there, the day of diagnosis, that afternoon, we started chemo. They don't muck around. And the hair loss happens over a number of weeks, but as soon as it started to come out, we thought, stuff this. We'll shave his hair. I shaved my head. Ryan shaved his head. Nan and Papa shaved their heads. Auntie Jenna shaved, so we wanted it to be normal. All the kids around us had no hair, so it was just our way to prevent Chase from having that feeling of his hair coming out. And that's different for little girls. and it's really sad because little girls, of course, hate it, and so little girls particularly will hold on to whatever hair they've got, so it can be another troubling issue for the parents just to manage the appearance of a child with cancer. That's okay. So we said, okay, cool, let's do the bone marrow transplant thing. What does it involve? And our oncologist said, there's 23 million donors worldwide. We don't just look at New Zealand. There's no such thing. It's an international registry. So what we're going to do is we're going to find out what bone marrow type Chase is. We'll put that information into the computer and we'll hope that it lights up with matches. We only needed one match, but of the 23 million donors, there was not one single match. So that's really when our real difficult battle started, because at the beginning we were kind of filled with hope, thinking, oh yeah, we just do the chemo, we just, we do what the regime is and then we get better. And so we had hope at that stage, but when we found out that there were no bone marrow matches, then we were like, okay, this is pretty serious, what do we do now? And we did what lots of families do, is we exhaust every avenue possible, and that includes the media, of course. And so we went crazy trying to stir up attention to us. We asked all our family and friends, our friends and family hosted bone marrow recruitment drives and all that. The chances of us finding a match within our network of friends and family is pretty low. But desperate times and all that. So our friends, a lot of our friends and family did join, but sadly, still there was no match. And I don't know how many of you have seen My Sister's Keeper, where the sibling was matched for her older sister. Well, a sibling has got a 25% chance of being a match for their brother or sister. Chase didn't have any, so that's who they turned to first. Because Ryan and myself only make up 50% of Chase, there's a low chance that we'll be a match, but because our children have the same mix of us, they're likely to be matches for each other. It's 25% chance, which isn't great, but at least there's hope, and some children do find a match within their siblings, which is ideal. So the next best thing was a stem cell transplant, and this is where people get confused because they say, well, didn't they actually have a transplant? And we say yes, but it wasn't a bone marrow transplant, it was a stem cell transplant, which was our second best option. And so in Australia, when women give birth, they've got a national-wide free umbilical cord banking system. We don't have that in New Zealand. Some of you might be aware that when you have a child, they say, do you want to bank your umbilical cord? And if you say yes, it's thousands of dollars. But in Australia, it's free because they've got the facilities and the numbers to justify the storing facility. And plus, outside of New Zealand and other cultures, other Indigenous cultures, people don't have the same affiliation, to the placenta. And so for those people, it's easier to give up. It's not seen as something sacred. So the rate of donation in other countries is higher. And so luckily enough for us, 12 years prior, a mother had been asked, do you want to bank your cord blood for someone who might need it in the future? And she luckily said yes. And so that boy's cord blood was able to be put into Chase. This is it here. It's been stored, flown over from Australia, stored at whatever degrees it needs to be, and it's just in this like a little DVD case, and it's frozen, and they just thaw it out. And I'll go through the process of giving Chase the stem cells is exactly the same process as bone marrow would be given to someone. I've got a drawing over there that I'll get to. And so this is transplant day. Chase is awake. There's no big scary knives. We're all there. We all said our karakia. We all said, come on, this is our best chance. This is our only chance, in fact. It wasn't a great match, so they mark you out of 6. And an ideal match is 6 out of 6. And our boys was only a 4 out of 6, but it was all we had, so we had to go with it. And the next slide can be confronting because the internal process that goes on when you're trying to accept a foreign body of fluid can be really, really difficult, and they need to, you are maxed on medication to stop the side effects. So as you can see, it takes its toll. You can't really see in this picture very well, but it's the body is basically battling. The body's going, whoa, this is a foreign thing in me, I want to get it out, and the stem cells are going, no, please accept me because you need me. So there's this internal battle that's going on, and it causes all sorts of side effects. But our boy managed it like all kids do, really well. He recovered from it, and in fact, he was 100% cancer-free after about 4 months of recovery. We had some really big upsets and scares in that time. He had a few really serious seizures. His skin flared up. We had to boost him with steroids, which is why he put on so much weight. But we had done it effectively. He was now cancer-free, and we were able to carry on with our lives as best as we could. We went back to Hamilton. I decided that I'd given up my studies by that point. Chase and I just stayed at home and mucked around and did cool stuff. My husband eventually went back to work, and we just kind of got on with life because we knew that it was still a long haul. They don't say you're cancer-free for 5 years post, so we still had a long kind of recovery time, but we thought we had done it. And then of course there was that scary word that everyone with cancer or all the families worry about, and that's the R word. And we were at Hamilton Zoo, and all I looked at Chase, and there was just something slightly funny about his eyes. It just looked a little bit off, and something inside said this is bad. And so I told the doctors, had the blood test, and then had a terrible 3-week wait. And then on New Year's Eve 2011, the doctor came, and he didn't say anything. He said, we're in Whakatane at this stage, can you get up here, how quickly, and bring all your family? And so he didn't need to say anything. We knew what he was going to tell us. And so we did all that. We flew up, all our family came up. It was terrible and the worst New Year's that you could ever imagine. And we were told at that stage that we had exhausted all options. There's no more treatment left in New Zealand. We've done everything that was available to us, and if we wanted to seek treatment elsewhere, we would have to fund it ourselves and research it ourselves. Which we did. We ended up going to the UK. We found an experimental drug trial. Our family and friends went crazy, fundraising for us. We were lucky enough to have the Warriors just randomly get on board, and they gave us a big donation. We needed 4 rounds of this drug, and it was $100,000 a round, and $800 a night in the UK in a London-based hospital. So we didn't have enough money to even get through the first one, but we thought, stuff it. Our families just said, go, we'll figure it out. And our doctor, in fact, dropped down from being our doctor, and we had a really close relationship with us, and he just said, go, get on the plane, we'll figure it out. And so it was really nice that he kind of let down his guard and said, this is your best chance. Of all the drug trials, this looks most promising. So we did that. The UK experience was horrific. We had 5 weeks of it. Our system is so much better. If you've ever complained about the New Zealand system, when you go overseas, man, you appreciate a Starship. It was just amazing. We knew that, but up there it was terrible. For example, it was so old school that they wouldn't even talk to me. They would do everything via Ryan. I was like, what are we in? Like the war? And it was really hard to communicate. Doctors knew best, parents didn't, and we weren't used to that. In Starship, we were on the same level, and doctors would say, what do you guys think? What should we do? In the UK, it was like, no, this is what we're going to do, and too bad if you don't agree on it. So, man, I don't think they appreciated me around, because we sure spoke our mind when we were over there. But anyway, after the first round, our window to come home was getting smaller and smaller, and our team over there said, if you don't get home now, you're not going home, and Chase is going to have to go to hospice in the UK, and you're going to have to wait here, and if you want your parents to come over, they're going to have to come over. And of course, both of Brian's mother and my mum can't fly and couldn't fly at that stage. So although they were of course willing, like any nanny, to just ditch their side of their health ailments and just get on a plane and see what happens to get to us. But we managed to get on the first flight out of there, and I tell you what, touching down New Zealand was the best feeling I had ever had, because I knew that we were home. I knew that the future was scary, but at least we were at home. And so we decided to spend our final summer together and just do whatever we wanted. We just totally overindulged, and I have absolutely no regrets about what we did. And it wasn't crazy things like going to Disneyland, it was things like going to Marae Tōtara and going on the Flying Fox, because you know, in a 3-year-old's mind, it doesn't take much, don't need much to make them happy, as long as you know they've got their friends and family around. And then of course in June, our boy decided it was time to go home, and he left us on the 15th of June. And as you can see there, the effects of the steroids and the pain medication took its toll on him, but by a smile you can see that he wasn't, the cancer never got to his spirit. So we were faced with, you know, the worst imaginable situation that parents could ever find themselves in, and kind of floundering around in life, wondering what we were going to do. And we thought, we had this money left over from our drug trial that we had hoped that we would spend, but of course we didn't. So we thought, what are we going to do? And of course we got lots of phone calls from charities saying, give it to us, you know, we'll set up a legacy fund or whatever. And we decided, no, we're going to do our own thing. And so we started up the Dream Chaser Foundation, and support children with cancer all over New Zealand. People say, why isn't there, you know, people don't know from the term Dream Chaser Foundation what you guys do, and we're like, cool, that's because kids with cancer know they've got cancer, they're reminded of it every 5 seconds. So we're glad that in our charity title we don't have the word cancer, and those there are our values. And I think the biggest one is that we get it, we've been through it ourselves, and parents really relate to us because of that. We're kind of, you know, grassroots, parent-led, family-focused, all those things that matter in a time of distress. And what we've learned over the past 5 years is every child's journey is different. Just because another child may have AML, they might have M7 strand, the outcomes, the treatment, how children are affected is completely unique and individual. So that's one thing that we make sure we treat every family that we come across and that we meet with the respect that that child deserves. So I'm going to go quickly through this and get to the bone marrow stuff. So any child aged from newborn to 18 is eligible for our services. All they need to do is register with us, and people ask us how we fund things, and we have a giving program called Dream Chaser Guardian program, and all we ask for is $1 a week. We decided to go lots of numbers and small donation rather than the other way around. We decided to do everything that other charities don't do. We don't lock you in to a contract. If you miss a payment, who cares? If you want to up a payment, that's cool. If you for some reason need to cancel it, that's cool too. We get all different situations, people contacting us going, oh, you know, my child has started a paper run, and so we try and teach them about charitable giving. So, you know, now we've got like family guardians, which is great. So mum, dad and the kids donate their $1, and what we do is all of that, 100% of that $1 gets divvied up, and that's how we fund things. Half of it goes to our family services, which is our grocery vouchers, our petrol vouchers, and weekly grants, and then 25% of it is our $500 grant. So for a good example is in winter, when you've got a child with cancer recovering or going through treatment, you need to keep your house really spotless and clean and free of any type of bugs and warm the whole time. So at the end of winter, parents are faced with, you know, $400 or $500 bills because they've had the heat pump pumping the whole time. And so our special grants are set aside so that we can help, you know, alleviate some of that financial burden from them. And 25% goes to Ronald McDonald House. Ronald McDonald House is just a critical charity. It's basically, for want of a better word, it's like a hotel for families who are going through life-threatening situations. You go up to, it's on the same ground as Starship, you go to Starship, you do your thing, and then you come home and sleep at Ronald McDonald House. And so Ryan and I, alternate nights, would do that, go back and forth. Our parents stayed with us as much as they could, and we just lived at Ronald McDonald House. It's like a big flatting situation, so you've got shared facilities, but your own room, and so what we decided to do was to donate a portion of people giving money to us to RMH. With the money we do things like have glow parties and movie nights, because lots of these kids, they're okay when they're together because they're all compromised health-wise, but they can't go out in the general population. So we think, what are these kids missing out on? And it's simple things like going to the movies, so we try and bring things there. We bring performers in, we do all sorts of things, basically. We do big present drops about 2 or 3 times a year, where every child gets just a big massive bundle. Often they're higher than the height of the child. And with the teenager, I don't know if you can see there, that's a whole lot of cash we ditched trying to figure out what teenagers like these days. And so what we did, a lot of feedback was like, they just prefer money. So what we do is we just give teenagers money, and then it gives them, that when they get well, they've already spent it in their head, so it gives them something positive to look forward to. So we try and do a lot of thinking about what kids, what are appropriate hospital gifts, because you'll be surprised about the type of gifts that you receive in hospital that you just simply can't use, like a massive bouncy ball. We're like, okay, cool, thanks. We'll play with that in a year when we're outside. And I guess I've got a picture here. One of our biggest things that we did was there's 42 rooms in Ronald McDonald House, and when we were there, they had a TV the size, I'm not even kidding, of my laptop screen. And it was terrible. You want to come back at the end of the night, try and relax and watch TV, and they only had these tiny little monitor screens. So we decided our big 20,000 plus project was going to be to fit out all the rooms with 32-inch Samsung smart TVs, and the smart part was really important because you'd walk past the 2 PCs and there'd be lines of family trying to get on Facebook to say, trying to get their free Wi-Fi, trying to give updates and stuff, and children wanted to play games and whatever. So now they can do it in their rooms, and it's an even playing field. Some families couldn't afford to have credit all the time, so now everyone is able to do their thing in their room, in the privacy of their room, and actually be able to watch a decent sized TV. So now we get to the bone marrow part, and we partnered with NZ Blood because of course they administer blood products and bone marrow. So going back to the issue, one of the biggest factors is that if the child is Māori, Pacific Islander, or any other ethnic minority group, their chances of finding a bone marrow match drop substantially. So next to us in our room, we were admitted on the same day, a little girl, Lauren, who became great friends with Chase. She was Pākehā. She needed a bone marrow transplant. She had the option of 6. So they could go through those 6 matches and go, who's the best out of this? Next door, we didn't have any. Next door, the Fijian Indian boy had 1 match. So the chances of that 1 match being perfect for him are pretty slim, but at least he had 1. We had none, and it's just, you can walk down the corridor, and if they're Māori or Pacific Island, you can almost guarantee they're not going to find a match unless they've got a sibling or they have a miracle. And so, of course, that's the question of why. And it's one of the biggest things is, of course, due to low donation rates. So Pākehā tend to donate more because of a number of reasons, which I'm going to get into. It's, as you're probably starting to become aware, it's all to do with your genetic makeup. So Māori will find their match in a Māori person. So we can only turn to ourselves to find a match within our own Māori people. A lot of it is that we don't know about, just like I knew nothing about it, lots of people don't know about bone marrow donation. They're scared of it. They think bone marrow, they think solid bone mass, they think I'm going to go in through my hip, I'm going to be put out, I'm going to have 3 weeks off work. That is all old school. They don't do it like that anymore. And of course the cultural affiliation of the body and the fears about donating body products to, that to outside Māori. So that's number one myth, because if you donate your bone marrow and you're found to be a match, well then that person is going to be Māori. Not like red blood. When you donate red blood, it goes to anyone who's got the same blood match. But bone marrow is a specific genetic trail linking back to the donor and the recipient. So I'll just go over to my drawing here. So what happened? I'm going to use Jackie. She's joined the bone marrow registry. She's put up her hand and said, yeah, I'll join the bone marrow registry. She's rung NZ Blood. They've said, yep, come in and we'll test you. So what they do is they'll take some blood. They'll send a portion of that away to see what type of bone marrow makes up Jackie's body. That's it. So now she's on the bone marrow registry. She just goes about her life as normal. And then she gets a phone call saying, yeah, we found a match. Can you come in and donate? So she comes into NZ Blood. She sits in a chair like that. They hook her up in one arm, like this. And it's just like donating blood. You sit there awake, you don't get knocked out, it doesn't go through your hip, it just goes in through your vein. So they put a lure in there just like donating red blood. And because bone marrow sits within your bloodstream, it's fluid. It's not mass, it's not solid mass. So what they do is they take the blood out, they put it into a machine, I don't know what it's called, and that spins it out. So what they do then is it spins the bone marrow out. So the green is represents the bone marrow. What they do is they collect the bone marrow and they give you your red blood back. So Jackie's sitting in the chair like that. It's going out, going into a machine and coming back into your arm. So in fact, your recovery time is actually not that bad compared to donating blood, because remember your red blood carries all your oxygen. So when you donate red blood, you can feel a bit yuck and faint. But when you donate bone marrow, you're actually getting your red blood back. They're just spinning out the bone marrow. And so there's a step missing. What they do is they actually collect it and then they give it exactly the same way to the patient. So the patient's probably in a hospital bed, but still the same thing. Put it in their arm and it just goes all throughout their body. And that's the same process with stem cells. So that's what they did with Chase. He was just awake and they just injected him, and half an hour later he was full of new stem cells. Same process with bone marrow. What they had done prior to prepare a patient to receive bone marrow is that they whack you with a massive dose of chemo, and for a little while there you actually don't have any bone marrow in your body, and when it gets to that stage you can't recover from it. You have to replace it or it's fatal. So if Jackie's called up to be a match, she can say, oh, I've changed my mind, or I'm not well, or I'm pregnant, or something like that, all the way up until a certain point. But as soon as they start preparing the patient, Jackie's ethically obligated to continue. But there's a period where people can change their mind or whatever, so you're not locked in, but at a certain point you are. So Ryan and I, well, of course we have to walk the talk, is that the saying? So we decided to become qualified bone marrow recruiters for NZ Blood. That means we can go anywhere where there's a blood drive. Like I could go to the RSA right now and sign people up officially to be on the bone marrow registry. I can't do it, of course, but I can be part of that administration in the background. Any opportunity we can talk, where we can get in front of a crowd, we do. And we try and hook up with other organisations who are doing the same thing. There's not a lot, there are now, but when we started we were the only charity promoting bone marrow. And of course a big thing for us was securing charity ambassadors that fitted the profile of your prime bone marrow donor. Solomeo, we contacted them and said, this is affecting the children, your children from back home. The Pacific Island children don't find a match either. Do you want to come and have a chat with us? And they of course jumped at it. And in fact we convinced them to join. And so there, apart from Amatai, Moses and Penny are bone marrow, on the bone marrow registry. They haven't donated, but they're on the registry, so that's a key point. So they might get a phone call one day saying, can you come in? Same with Taika. I said, Facebooked him, thinking I would get an automated reply, and said, oh, this is really important, do you want to join us? And he said, yep, what can I do? And I said, first you can be our charity ambassador, and second of all, how do you feel about actually joining? The cut-off is 40. he was 41, but NZ Blood, because of his profile, just let that slide. And so he was actually able to join, and this is a shot from TV3. So we got a lot of hype around Taika particularly, and you know, people might say, oh, you're just looking for high-profile people, and that's exactly right. We are, because what do people do? They look towards their idols, and they think, oh, if he's not scared of a needle, maybe I shouldn't be either. I am missing a massive bit of information here, and Jackie was actually, no offence, but a bad example. I should have used, oh, I can't even use you, Bob, sorry. Probably should have used you, because currently they're looking for 18 to 40-year-old males. So when a few years back it was open, and so I was able to join, and then they figured out, they did some more research, and they decided that women actually weren't that great. So we get a lot of people going, oh, why? You know, we really want to donate, da da da. And women, of course, are, no offence, but seem to be a lot more giving. They've got that maternal bond, so it's easier to convince a woman to do something than a man sometimes. Sometimes men are a bit scared about those big scary needles. What happened though is they discovered that women at childbirth, they create an antibody. And so if they were to give my bone marrow to a patient, that patient's just got one more difficult thing to overcome. My antibody will create a battle that they just don't need, whereas if a male did it, it's just erased. So they're...
no worries, we share it with anybody. Everything.
So what we say to those who aren't male, or those who are younger than 18 or older than 40, say go to the people in your lives that do meet the criteria. Help spread the word. Your children, your grandchildren, you know, have a chat to them about becoming a bone marrow donor. This is a video that I'm going to show.
Question. Why the age limit? There's not an age limit on platelets and plasma and other blood donating.
If you are a current blood donor, which means you're already in their system and they know about your blood history, it goes up to 65.
Oh, okay.
So, but if you're not a current blood donor, they won't take you over 40, and it's just because you get a little things start to go downhill, your bone mass starts to go down.
I got that.
You got it? Yeah.
I'm in the bank,
yeah.
so I can go to 65.
So your prime is your 18-year-old rugby player, big bone mass, lots of bone marrow flowing through their bodies. So in this video, I'll just point out two people. The first boy, Jake, who's searching on the beach, he doesn't look like he's got cancer, but he's got the form of leukemia that's slow developing. Our son had acute leukemia, so it will hit really quick, but he's got chronic leukemia, so he needs to find his bone marrow match, and he hasn't. He's been searching for about 3 years. He's Samoan and he can't find a match. The second little boy with the nose tube and skin issues, his name is Isaiah. He's Samoan and he did find his match. And then of course it features us. So I'll just play that. Somehow, why isn't it playing?
Finding a bone marrow match can be as difficult as searching for two identical shells on a beach. It can be easy to find similar shells, but to find a mirror image, that's a challenge.
Children with cancer and other blood conditions often need a bone marrow transplant to survive. There are over 26 million bone marrow donors worldwide, but only 8,000 Māori and Pacific Islanders, which mean many of our tamariki don't find the life-saving bone marrow match they need. Thankfully, our mate Isaiah found his match.
But many are still searching. Jake is Samoan and desperately needs to find his bone marrow match.
Sadly for some children, it's too late.
These kids fight so hard for their right to live. We need you to do your part to help them.
Join us as we support the Dream Chaser Foundation
in encouraging more Māori and Pacific Island people to become bone marrow donors.
Be someone's hero. Give the gift of life.
If you're male aged between 18 and 40, then visit bonemarrow.org.nz for more information or call 0800 800 256.
So that's officially the end of my presentation, but I just want to note some things that have changed since we filmed this video. People ask why I've got Pippa. It's because she's Samoan, and a lot of people don't know that. And so we've put her there because she's blonde hair and blue eye, and we put that there we put her there to show that you don't know what people's genetic makeup is. So find out about yourself, and you could be a match. Pio in there, some of you might know and some might not know. His son Taina just recently passed away from leukemia, exactly the same type as Chase and exactly the same strand. He was 17, he might have even just turned 18. And what's difficult about seeing this now is because at the time, Pio was all on board because his son had found his match in his brother, and he was recovering from it, and his outlook looked really promising, and he was like going to be the one that would beat strand M7. So Pio was all about it and all up in bone marrow, and so he jumped on board. And then of course after filming this, his son went home and picked up a simple virus and it took him. So he was effectively cancer free. So that's the kind of thing that families are up against. Their body is under a lot of stress, they've got compromised immune system, and they can pick up things like the common cold and it can be fatal. Having Pio there is really amazing, but it's also really sad because he's in the same boat as us now, and so what he's done is he's jumped on it even more, just like we have, and we're working together to do our bone marrow thing. So that's about it. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer it.
O Whatu Manawa, Tūmeke FM 96.9.